Have you ever wondered who truly pays for all the new roads, parks, and schools when a community grows like really rapidly?
A great question.
It really gets to the heart of how our communities evolve, right? And it's become a particularly hot topic down in St. Johns County, Florida.
hmm Definitely seeing a lot of growth there.
Exactly. It's growing fast. There's an upcoming vote on potentially increasing fees. And our mission today is to take a deep dive into an investigative report looking at these impact fees.
Good topic.
Our goal for you listening is to unpack this report. We want to understand, what are impact fees really? How do St. Johns County's current fees stack up against, well, the actual costs of growth?
And against what other places are doing.
Yes, exactly. What are comparable areas charging? And maybe most importantly, what are the real-world implications of all this for you if you're already living there?
Right.
Okay, so let's unpack this because our sources here reveal some truly crucial insights into how communities fund their future. And it might not be quite what you expect.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that impact fees, they're fundamentally designed to make sure new development covers its fair share, its proportionate share of infrastructure costs.
Okay.
It's really about making sure that, the excitement of growth doesn't leave existing residents holding the bag for new roads or expanded fire stations or the new parks that growth naturally requires.
So it's supposed to be proactive, fiscal health.
Exactly. It's a proactive measure for fiscal health.
So let's start with the basics, maybe for anyone who's a bit new to this. What exactly are impact fees? Are we just talking about another kind of tax?
Not exactly, no. I mean,
Yeah.
while they are a mandatory charge, think of them more like very specific one-time charges just on new development.
One time. Okay.
Yeah, one time. And they're explicitly collected to fund the capital infrastructure, the big physical stuff that's directly needed because of that new growth.
Like what kind of stuff specifically?
Well, essential things like new roads, expanded parks, more recreation facilities, additional public safety resources like fire stations, rescue equipment, even new library branches sometimes.
Gotcha.
The core idea really is to stop existing residents from having to shoulder the whole financial burden through their general taxes. It's a mechanism to try and ensure growth pays for growth.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. And our sources, they lay out the current St. Johns County fees pretty clearly. For a single-family home, the county's 2021 ordinance breaks it down like this. Transportation is $4,006.
Okay.
Parks and recreation, that's $2,032. Public safety, so fire and rescue, is $581. Library fees are $287, and law enforcement is $351. So that adds up to a combined county residential impact fee of $7,257 for one new single-family home. Now, let's just pause there. I mean, for a lot of families, $7,257 that's real money.
It absolutely is a significant cost.
Yeah, maybe a down payment on a car or a good chunk of savings. And this is just one fee, but it starts adding up fast for developers, you'd imagine.
Right. And it's absolutely crucial to remember that this county total, the $7,257, it doesn't cover everything needed to support new residents.
Ah, okay. What else is there?
Well, the St. Johns County School District, for instance, they have their own separate fee.
For schools, right. Makes sense.
Exactly. And their 2022 educational facilities fee for a single-family home is an additional $9,645.
Wow. Okay, $9,645 just for schools.
Just for schools on top of the county fee.
So if you add those together, $7,257 plus $9,645, you're looking at a total combined one-time impact fee for a new single-family home in St. Johns County of approximately $16,902.
That's the number, $16,902.
That's a substantial upfront cost for a developer to factor in.
It absolutely is. But, and here's the pivotal detail, the thing that really shifts our understanding of the current situation.
Okay.
Those county rates, the $7,257, they were set back in 2021.
Right, you mentioned that.
Now, just imagine trying to buy today's infrastructure roads, parks with yesterday's money. It doesn't quite work, does it?
No, especially not lately.
Exactly. Construction input costs, we're talking everything from concrete and steel for roads to the labor for building fire stations. They've just skyrocketed since 2021.
How much are we talking?
Well, the Producer Price Index for construction inputs, that's a key measure, it rose over 40% from January 2020 to its peak in 2022.
40%.
Yeah. And even as of late 2023, it's still hovering around 35% higher than pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, so costs are still way up.
Way up. And this inflation has, drastically widened the gap between the fees they collect and the actual cost of building what's needed.
So that $7,257 buys a lot less now.
Precisely. In essence, every dollar collected based on those 2021 rates now buys you only about, what, 65 cents worth of new roads or parks or public safety stuff?
Wow, that puts things in really stark perspective. A 35% increase in costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fee is stretched pretty thin.
Hmm.
So, knowing this, how do St. Johns County's fees compare to similar areas, both in Florida and maybe nationally? Are they like an outlier, or are they pretty typical for a fast-growing, desirable place?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the report indicates St. Johns County's fees are actually on the, well, the much lower side when you look at comparable areas facing similar growth pressures.
Really lower.
Yeah. Let's start with in Florida. If we just focus on the county fees for a second, setting aside the schools part.
Okay, just the $7,257 number.
Right. St. Johns County is at 7,257 number. Now contrast that with, say, Martin County. In 2023, their total county fees were approximately $16,238.
16,000. That's more than double.
More than double St. Johns County's rate. Or look at Palm Beach County. Their mobility and roadway fees alone can top $9,000.
Just for roads. More than SJC's total.
Correct. And their total county fees are significantly higher overall. Osceola County's 2023 fees are around $11,000 to $14,000. Volusia County recently updated theirs to about $8,800.
Okay, so even Volusia, which is closer, is still higher.
Still higher, yes.
That's a stark difference, especially for counties seeing similar population booms. So it sounds like St. John's isn't just behind because of inflation. It seems like maybe they historically chose a lower fee structure compared to their neighbors. Is that fair based on the sources?
That's precisely what the data suggests, yes. The conclusion seems quite clear. St. Johns County's current fees are definitively in the lower tier among comparable, affluent, rapidly growing coastal Florida counties. So it isn't just inflation catching up. It seems to also be about a different philosophical approach compared to his peers, at least historically.
And how does that comparison look nationally, when you look outside Florida?
Nationally, the picture also puts St. Johns County on the, let's say, moderate to low end.
Okay.
If you look at desirable suburban and exurban areas, places getting tons of migration, much like St. Johns County. Think parts of Texas, North Carolina, Tennessee.
Right, those high-growth Sunbelt areas.
Exactly. Total impact fees there, including everything, regularly range from $15,000 up to $30,000, sometimes even more, per single-family home.
$15,000 to $30,000.
Or more, yeah. These often bundle in more things, like water and sewer sometimes, or public safety capacity. So when you take St. Johns County's total of around $16,902, and remember, that includes the big school district fee.
Right, the $9,600 school part.
Yes, that total still places it firmly on the moderate to low end of this national spectrum for similar, desirable, high-growth communities.
So what does this all mean when we talk about a fair impact fee? Is it just, a number politicians pull out of thin air, or is there a more objective way to figure it out?
Oh, it's definitely not supposed to be arbitrary. A fair fee is actually quite rigorously defined, both by Florida law and just standard municipal finance practice.
Okay, how?
It's based on something called a nexus study.
A nexus study sounds official.
It is. It's a legally defensible, really comprehensive study. What it does is calculate the new residents' proportionate share of the cost of the infrastructure their new home or development requires system-wide.
A proportionate share, that sounds key.
It is. It's all about ensuring that growth precisely pays for the growth it creates, rather than shifting that burden onto existing residents. It's not about stopping development. It's about achieving, fiscal equity.
Makes sense.
And actually, there's a recent Florida Senate bill, SB 180, that's made the legal standard for adopting any new fees even higher, much stricter.
Oh, interesting. How so?
It demands a nexus study of really exceptional rigor and precision. So if a county commission tried to vote on new fees without an updated, fully compliant study, well, they'd basically be inviting immediate and probably successful legal challenges from developers.
So they have to have this rigorous study now.
The law is very clear. The fees must be directly tied to the costs caused by the new development, and that study has to prove the connection, the nexus.
That's a crucial detail then. The county really has to do its homework thoroughly to avoid legal fights. And what does the report say about St. Johns County's own history with setting these fees based on studies?
Well, what's also quite telling is looking at St. Johns County's own past decisions. Their 2019 Parks and Recreation Impact Fee Update Study. This was done by independent consultants, Tischler Price.
Okay.
It actually found a maximum defensible fee of $4,472 for parks for a single-family home.
$4,472 was defensible based on their study.
Right. But what did the county commission adopt in 2021? Only $2,032.
Less than half of what the study said was the maximum defensible rate.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this clearly shows a prior political decision, right, to set fees significantly below the calculated fair share that the study indicated new development actually required just for parks.
Fitting.
Meaning, essentially, for every new home built since then,
Yeah.
existing residents have been subsidizing the park portion of new development, picking up a pretty big chunk of the difference.
Wow, okay.
So if you put all this together, those past gaps where fees were set below study recommendations, the huge inflation spike we talked about that jacked up construction costs, and the clear comparisons showing there's lower than peer counties. Well, an SB 180 compliant nexus study done today would very likely find that St. Johns County's county fees alone, just the county part, should probably be somewhere in the range of $15,000 to $20,000.
15 to 20,000 compared to the current $7,257.
That's the potential range, yes.
Yeah.
100% to 200% increase from current levels, realistically, just to catch up to the actual costs of growth today.
That's a huge jump.
It is. But it's not about arbitrarily charging more. It's potentially about aligning the fees with economic reality of building infrastructure right now.
It certainly highlights how far behind the curve the current fees might be. So let's connect this directly. What does this all mean for you if you're already living in St. Johns County? Maybe you've been there for years. How does this undercharging affect you, the existing resident?
It creates a very clear financial burden. Essentially, it acts like a subsidy flowing from existing taxpayers to new development.
A subsidy? How does that work in practice?
Well, when new development doesn't pay its full proportionate share, that cost doesn't just vanish, right? It has to be paid somehow. So it shifts onto you, the existing resident, in several concrete ways.
Like what?
You might see higher property tax millage rates for everyone. And for listeners, that's the rate used to calculate your annual property tax bill based on your home's value. So your taxes go up.
Okay, property taxes.
Or general fund revenue money that could be used for, say, maintaining the roads you already use, or funding existing parks or police services that gets diverted to build the new infrastructure that wasn't fully paid for by the developers.
So less money for existing needs.
Exactly. And critically, it often leads to the county taking on more debt, like issuing bonds, to cover the costs. And who pays back that debt plus interest over many years?
The existing taxpayers?
The existing residents. Yeah. Think of it like this. If a new neighbor moves in next door, but only pays for half the cost of the new shared fence, who covers the rest?
You do, I guess.
You do. It's basically the same principle with underfunded infrastructure, just on a much bigger, more complex community scale.
That makes it very clear.
And this really gets at a fundamental challenge for long-term fiscal sustainability. There's a lot of research from public finance experts that consistently shows residential development, on its own, often doesn't generate enough tax revenue over time to cover the long-term costs of the services it requires.
It costs more to service than it brings in.
Often, yes. It can create what's called a structural deficit. Year after year, the cost to serve new residential areas, police, fire, roads, parks, exceeds the property taxes and other revenues they generate.
So the gap keeps growing.
It can. And that's why proper impact fees are seen as such a critical tool. They help mitigate this structural deficit, helping ensure communities can actually afford the growth they're experiencing and maintain financial health down the road.
Okay, but we often hear the counter-argument, right? That if you raise impact fees significantly, especially by the amounts you're suggesting might be needed, won't that stifle affordable housing? Or maybe even halt development altogether, even in a hot market like St. John's? What does the report say about that economic angle?
Yeah, that's a common concern, and it's definitely part of the debate. But those arguments about stifling development, the report suggests they're actually often overstated, particularly in high-demand, high-growth areas like St. Johns County.
Why overstated?
Well, the analysis suggests that impact fees are primarily capitalized into the price of land.
Capitalize into the land price. What does that mean?
It means that developers who are pretty sophisticated about these costs often account for the expected impact fees when they're deciding how much to pay for the raw land in the first place.
So they factor it into their purchase offer for the land itself.
Exactly. It gets baked into that initial land negotiation rather than just being tacked onto the final price the home buyer pays months or years later.
So it doesn't necessarily translate dollar for dollar into a higher home price for the buyer.
Not necessarily, or at least not entirely. In premier markets with immense demand, which St. Johns County clearly is, the evidence suggests Impact fees typically don't significantly slow down the overall pace of development.
Because the demand is just so strong.
The demand is just so strong, people still want to move there, businesses still want to locate there, and developers will generally still find ways to build there because it's profitable. It's more about how that cost is distributed within the whole development process.
Interesting. And it also seems like, well, the quality of life itself in St. Johns County is maybe its biggest economic asset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, the promise of good schools, roads that aren't gridlocked, nice parks, that's the magnet, right? That's
Right.
what draws people and businesses, and that's what keeps property values high.
You've hit on a key point. Failing to adequately fund the infrastructure needed to maintain that high quality of life, especially during rapid growth, that ultimately degrades the very thing that makes St. Johns County attractive and valuable in the first place.
Right.
If you don't keep pace with growth's demands, you inevitably get worsening traffic congestion, overcrowded classrooms, maybe slower emergency response times, parks that are worn out.
And that impacts everyone.
It directly impacts property values, the overall desirability of the area, which in turn affects the local economy and the long-term health of the community. It can become a kind of self-defeating cycle if it's not managed with foresight.
Okay, so to quickly summarize our deep dive today for you listening, St. Johns County's current impact fees appear significantly lower than both the actual inflation-driven costs of building new infrastructure today and also lower than what many comparable counties in Florida and across the nation are charging.
That's the core finding.
And the legal standard for setting these fees, thanks to Florida's SB 180, is now incredibly rigorous. It demands a robust, data-driven nexus study.
Can't just guess anymore.
Right. And crucially, the consequence of undercharging new development, according to these sources, is that you, the existing resident, end up effectively subsidizing that new growth.
Through potentially higher taxes or diverted funds or more public debt.
So the core argument from this report, for you to think about, really boils down to one of fiscal responsibility. It's about ensuring that new development truly pays its full share of the capital costs it creates.
Making growth pay for growth, as intended.
And the most important immediate action item suggested by these sources is for St. Johns County to commission a fully compliant SB 180 nexus study right away.
Let the data lead.
Exactly. Let objective data and thorough analysis, not just lobbying or, political pressures, determine the appropriate and fair fee that ensures growth actually pays its own way.
And this really raises an important question, I think, for you to consider as you watch your own community grow wherever you are. What is the true cost of that growth? And who do you believe should ultimately bear that cost to ensure the long-term health, the financial stability, and the quality of life of the entire community?